Nancy Guthrie's suspected kidnappers are reportedly asking for $6 million via Bitcoin. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, our former colleague here, explained that that request for cryptocurrency might indicate a high degree of sophistication from those abductors.
I believe they're very sophisticated in terms of, the IP address using VPNs, messages that could be going through other countries and other IP addresses. Then, it's not the old money drop anymore. It's Bitcoin, the Bitcoin wallet. Then it goes through a blockchain. It could go through other countries. There was a lot of thought that went into this. They're using, technology today. Old crimes are being committed in new ways because of advanced technology. It's hard for us to figure this out.
Well, with us now is award-winning tech journalist, the cyber guy, Kurt Knudsen. Kurt, all right, walk us through how difficult it might be for authorities to trace Bitcoin as opposed to traditional payments.
Well, I mean, we originally thought, Guy, how are you? We originally thought that Bitcoin was sort of untraceable. But there have been some cases that have proven otherwise. So there is actually a way to trace it, not always, but many times. And it doesn't happen overnight. Many times it happens weeks, months, sometimes years after an event when authorities were able to get access to it. The event that really showed us all of this was the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack. I don't know if you remember this, but there was a ransomware attack on this part of our oil infrastructure in the States. They went ahead and paid it, but what was interesting is they were able to get about 80% of it back, and that's highly unseen in the sort of cryptocurrency world. And the way they did that is, like the Guthries, if indeed this does happen, if indeed they convert $6 million in U.S. currency into essentially a wallet of Bitcoin, and then they send that over to whoever these kidnappers are, and they then receive that, they've got to figure out what to do with it once they've got it. And that's where the real traceability comes into play. And it may be that it sits there for a month or 2 months or 3 months or beyond, and it may be that it's transferred to 4 parties or 400 parties. But what happens is when investigators stay on it, there usually is a real great benefit to tracking Bitcoin. And that is, when Bitcoin is used, since there's no real, there's no bank associated with it, there's no government associated with it, but the way it works is it's a very public-facing transaction. So they can continue to watch this money well after it is sent. And that might be some hope later down the road at A, finding out who did this, and B, getting some of that money back.
Yeah, that's an important point. I want to ask you about the communications and the cyber of it all as it relates to that. So the fact that they've received these ransom communications, and again, we've had several experts saying that we don't know of the authenticity of these communications, but they've received communications. How difficult would it be for investigators and the FBI, with all of their resources and all of their technology, to trace the communications themselves back to whoever's sending them? That's a part of this that I find really interesting, that they've received communications, and with all that technology, they still can't figure out who's sending them. They can't track them.
And that tells us the level of sophistication of who we're dealing with. So it makes me think, as a cyber guy, like this rings so closely to how ransomware attacks work. And this works where they're cloaking email. And that's what they're doing. They're cloaking an email, so it may send it from here to here to here to here to here, and it's a bunch of nonsense destinations. But at the end of the day, it gets where it's going, but it makes it incredibly difficult to track that email message. Not impossible, but incredibly difficult.
Kurt, could you do it? I'm sorry to jump on Joey there, but I'm just wondering, you're the cyber guy. If they brought you in, could you do it?
No, I don't have that, but I'll tell you who does. And there really is no better organization than the FBI globally at pulling apart this data and really deciphering what they're trying to get out of it. Not only when it comes to Bitcoin, but also when you're talking about 41 cell phone towers within 3 miles of the Guthrie house in Tucson. You've also got about 202 to 204, depends on who you look at for the count, of automatic license plate readers. And they're combing through this data. And then, something interesting is even though a video camera may not on our app tell us that it saw anything, if it's our camera, it doesn't mean that it wasn't logging something not worth telling us. So investigators have a real talent at taking apart these logs of devices that are very common in our lives and then pouring that data into AI now and saying, what do we have here? What patterns are we seeing here? What cameras activated at least the idea that there was something to look at, but not enough to present it to the person who owned it and has an app? So it's a lot of stuff there that's, it may seem like nobody's doing anything right now, but I'll tell you right now, they are very busy with all of this data behind the scenes. It just doesn't happen overnight.
Kurt, this is kind of a simple question, but I think it really, we can sit here and try to solve this case all night long, and in some ways we will, and we won't be able to. But we have 1 million people watching this right now, millions that are wondering how this connects to their lives. We talk about how these kidnappers, if they exist, are sophisticated in the sense that they have masked their IP address and use Bitcoin. My question to you is, do you have to be knowledgeable in these things to be able to do this, or can you just open up and have a conversation with ChatGPT and learn how to do this? Well, I mean, can open AI sources now tell you how to do this?
Joey, really good question. These people know what they're doing. This isn't something they just read yesterday on ChatGPT and said, oh, this is how I do it. No, you've got some people that know what they're up to, whether they have done a kind of, physical ransom like this with a human being and from someone who's loved in America, a mother of that person, to really, the question is, why did they target that? But yes, they have indeed the skill set in place here. And I might, if I were an investigator, be looking back saying, all right, what rings a bell of someone who knows this much stuff about, this level of sophistication? And that, for me, it goes back to a lot of cyber crimes that have cost companies, not individual families, millions of dollars.
Kurt, really appreciate your time. A lot of really interesting insights there that we'll be, I'm sure, discussing at the table here over the course of the program. Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to.
And here now is Paul Moore, retired NYPD inspector, Fox News contributor. Paul, I want to play the video released by the Guthrie family again for those who may have missed it. Let's watch.
We received your message, and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
What is your reaction to that latest video?
Yeah, look, I'm just seeing it like everybody else. I just read it. So let's look at it very closely, the way Ted Williams did. I think where it gets most troubling is when you go near the end. So let me just tease it out similar to the way Ted just did. We received your message and we understand. That feels to me like there's something new. And one of the things we've all been talking about is, have they established a protocol to speak to each other? This sounds like they got something that is different from the note, the second note, that none of us were really sure was the same people originating in the same place as the first note that the authorities were taking seriously. Now, one of the points I've been making is that if the second note were from the same people, I think they would have included, once again, the crypto wallet. It's not definite, but that would have very much been a proof that it was the same people, because that's a long, unguessable number. And first of all, it goes to the fact that they want to be paid. So I would think it would have been in the second note, not definitive, but perhaps. This feels to me like it's something new. And therefore, I have to think that they did establish some way to talk to each other, one way or the other. That could be good news for the investigation, because you have something else to work on. Let's go on real quick. We beg you to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. Celebrate what? That feels to me like a euphemism, right? Celebrate her life, something like that. Also, return our mother to us. Let's look at not so much what's being said as what's not being said. If this note had said something like, okay, we're glad we've had a meeting of the minds. Let's set up the exchange. Would it not have very, very different verbiage? Would it not have said something like, thank you for getting in touch with us. We're ready to move forward, waiting further instructions, things like that. In fact, I would argue there would be nothing public, right? Further, if there were a good protocol to talk to each other, she wouldn't be making a video.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
she's sending this out for them to hear this, right? And let me just close the loop. This is the only way we can have peace. To me, that is the most troubling line. Peace, not we can't wait to see her, this is great kind of thing. Peace, when do you talk about peace? You talk about peace when you're talking about closure, right? And then finally, this is very valuable to us. Well, of course your mother is valuable to you if she's alive. That, by negative inference, to say she's valuable, to have to say something is valuable, that tells me that it's something you might not normally think has value, and that goes to the idea that we want her. I'm just going to be frank here, man.
Yeah.
You're asking me, I'm telling you. Her body.
Yeah. No,
Right?
and I think a part of that was
And so-
the next line. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I was going to say the fact that they're saying, and we'll pay.
Exactly.
Well, we'll pay has been there all along.
Exactly.
And the fact that they'll say, so what are you doing now? You're saying, we're going to pay for something that maybe had less value than it had yesterday.
Yeah.
So just as an investigator, I'm telling you, piecing this thing apart, I hope I'm wrong. You know, I think that's clear, but I don't think it's a positive sign.
Paul, I just got one question for you. You alluded to this, that they're communicating back to whoever has her mother with an Instagram post as opposed to through some sort of channel that's established. I would imagine they're speaking with law enforcement and coordinating this with them. Would you say the same thing, basically, that law enforcement supports them putting this video out there this way?
100%. We all know that when they did the first initial response, that we saw law enforcement going in with a ring light. And in fact, you know, when I got that report, I was asked, what do you think? And my first blush was, okay, they're going in with a camera and lighting. Maybe they're going to film a search warrant here so that if they get some incriminating evidence or something, they can demonstrate how they got it. You do things like that. You film locations. But when I heard a ring light, well, we all know what a ring light is, right? That's what people use to make selfies, and, you know, they put the videos on TikTok and all of that. So when I heard that, I began to think, all right, social media, and that was, in fact, the FBI going there, and they did confirm that they were there when that first video was made. I don't know about the second one that Cameron made after the first deadline passed, but certainly the first one, they were there. And at the press conference, they pretty much confirmed that. So let me go yes on that, Joey.
And Paul, I guess we'll also remember here that the next deadline that was previously established was to come on Monday at some point. I don't believe that there was a time period. But of course, today is Saturday, 1 week set that Nancy Guthrie has been missing. You know, so 2 days out from that next deadline, does that help you understand? You know, you walked through the possible interpretations of this last message. Does that add, you know, any, to me, I feel like maybe that's some more optimism. It's before the last deadline that they're still communicating and offering, you know, trying to set up some type of indication that they're willing to pay.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope so, certainly. And I could be wrong. It's just so cryptically worded. And you're not going to, if it looked like, okay, we got a message, we've had a proof of life, you're not going to be cryptic. You know, it's going to be real direct. You know, the only thing that she really says that is really sort of straightforward is we will pay. But that's been there all along, I would argue. So, you know, I hope I'm not taking the wrong messages away from that, because we all hope that she's alive. But this feels to me like they got some new piece of information where almost as if they said something like an accident occurred. This didn't go the way we expected.
Yeah.
You know, we know she had a heart condition, right? Something like that. And like you say, we're before the deadline. So would they not be saying things like, you know, before the deadline occurs? And I've heard disparate reporting on the deadline. My understanding is that the best sourcing from the authorities was that it was going to be 5 o'clock again on Monday, Arizona time. And that might be an inference in the Arizona Time piece. But because we're before the deadline, it would have felt to me more like a negotiation than it does.
Wow. All right, Paul, thank you so much. Please stick around. We always appreciate your insight.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page.
The Tucson area. Did you see something like that?
I would agree with that statement.
You would. Can you elaborate?
With things coming through digitally, is it assisted by AI? Is it written by the same person? It's very difficult to tell.
And first of all, did it provide 13 News? Mary Coleman, the evening anchor on that station, was on our show last night, and she confirmed that her station received the message this morning saying that the FBI is reviewing it. KOLD is one of 3 media groups, including TMZ, that received an apparent ransom note on Tuesday. It demanded millions of dollars in Bitcoin for Nancy Guthrie's release. It also set 2 deadlines, one for 5 p.m. yesterday and a second for this coming Monday. When Mary was on our show last night, she said she was anxiously awaiting an update, refreshing her email constantly.
I have been refreshing my email constantly over the last 41 minutes to see if we get anything new from them. Because again, as they said, that first deadline was at 5, and then we have another one coming up in a couple of days. So our eyes are on our email to see if we get anything new.
Well, they got something new. They got something new a few hours ago. In a moment, I'm going to speak with the KOLD 13 News director about that new message and this new development. It all comes after the latest plea from Savannah Guthrie's brother Cameron, who asked for direct talks with the kidnappers and proof that their mother is still alive.
Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
Now, that video message from Cameron Guthrie came out exactly 24 hours ago. The FBI is advising the Guthrie family on these ransom negotiations. It is an excruciating process for this family with very difficult decisions that they must make in the coming hours and days. The special agent in charge of the FBI has made it clear that any decision whether to pay this ransom is ultimately up to the family. Let's begin our coverage tonight with News Nation's Brian Enton live at the scene for us near Nancy Guthrie's home. Brian, you were just pushed back along with all the rest of the media as law enforcement swooped in. What's happening there right now?
Yeah, it happened suddenly, Elizabeth. We've been there for days, and they came in and said, everybody's got to leave the block. We're shutting down the block for investigative reasons. That's what they said, investigative reasons. And our News Nation drone is live up right now. So luckily, we still have this vantage point, Elizabeth, and we can see a little bit of what's going on. The FBI, I can confirm, is now back at Nancy Guthrie's house. I saw several FBI vans arriving, evidence vans, and we've been able to see with the drone them going in and out of the house. And I also know that they were in the back of the house with what appeared to be some neighbors pointing around and showing them something in the backyard. But the whole thing is blocked off again, and once again, a closed-off crime scene. Back to the second note, though, I do have a little more information, Elizabeth. According to KOLD, they are saying that the IP address is not the same IP address as the initial note, but it appears the sender used the same type of secure server to hide their IP address. And this is important. The new note contains something the senders seem to think will prove to investigators they're the same people who sent the first note. So there appears to be a connection between the first note and the second note, and the FBI has confirmed that they are now investigating. The sheriff's office has confirmed that they're investigating. And the timing is interesting because right around the same time we heard about this new note is the same time that all the FBI showed back up here at the house that they moved us all out quickly. And you can see with the drone now, they're back investigating again at Nancy Guthrie's house. Elizabeth?
All right, Brian, thank you so much. Let us know if anything new develops. We'll come right back to you. But joining us in the meantime on this new message is the KOLD News director, Jessica Bobula. Jessica, thanks so much for coming on. You've read this new message First of all, did it provide any proof of life that the family's been asking for?
No, it did not.
Did it say anything at all about Nancy's condition?
I can't go into those details.
But clearly the FBI is now swarming Nancy's house, especially in the backyard area. Was there anything in this newest message that would direct FBI to go look or find something?
We're not releasing details of what is contained in the email out of respect for the family, other than what you saw in Mary's social post, which actually the reporter also mentioned as well about the IP address.
But the key is we just saw that video from Cameron Guthrie last night at this exact time. The night before that, we had the video from all three of the Guthrie siblings with Savannah, Annie, and Cameron, all asking repeatedly, urgently, for proof of life. And you're saying this newest email does not provide that.
This newest email is something that I believe the FBI will need to look into without any interference. And so what we did the first time that we received the note, which is immediately send it to investigators and not report on it. And when we were able to speak with the sheriff's office and they decided to put out a statement jointly with the FBI, then we were able to confirm that, yes, we did receive a second note.
When did you get that? What time was that?
That was about 11:45 this morning.
And apparently you've been saying, Mary Coleman, who was on the show last night, your anchor, your evening news anchor, said that it's from a different IP address than the first one, but it still appears to be from the same person?
Yes. So what we have done is shared the information that we have. So the notes were both sent through our news tip system. Mm-hmm. So it does not need to come from a personal email address. You fill out a form. So through what we are able to do, in our back end with our website and our technology that we have here, we're able to make sure that the FBI has as much information as we can provide about where the email came from. But it is not from, a certain email address. You just fill it out, you put your name in there, you put what your email address is, but it's not, it's not showing that it is coming from that email address. So the IP address information that we sent to them is, like I said, that it is not the same address, but it does seem to trace back to a similar cloaking software.
And it sounds the same in tone and tenor?
It's hard to tell. There's sentence structure, but we're also doing a lot of reporting of our own today about how with digital notes, this isn't a piece of paper with magazine letters cut out or anything. It's hard to tell, with things coming through digitally, is it assisted by AI? Is it, written by the same person? It's very difficult to tell.
And did this message have an email address on it?
Yes, our form does require that you put a name, an email address, and a birth date. And so both of the notes had that, but they were not the same as each other, the two notes.
So they were different. The name, email address, and birth dates were different on the two notes. Were they?
Right. Like I said, it's just a form, so you can just type it in. There's no way to verify that.
You can put in Roger Rabbit and yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is this commonly known that people can get messages to you this way, a way in which they don't have to reveal their name, their email address?
It's a system that we use, and we've had it on our website for years. What I'll say is that it's usually not used in this way, right? I mean, usually people do want us to be able to contact them. Hey, I have a news tip for you. Please call me at this number or email me back at this address. And then we say, oh, okay, here, would you like to talk to us about your news tip? So it's not usually an issue, but yes, that is the case, is that you can fill out the form however you'd like. In fact, some people do send in anonymous news tips, and I couldn't tell you why, but that may be one of the reasons why our system works that way, so that a person could send in an anonymous news tip. But then, like I said, it depends upon if they leave a way that we can then contact them back, and in a normal situation, they would want us to. In this situation, clearly they don't.
If you have determined that the names are fake, what are the two names that were used in the two notes?
We're not sharing those details out of respect for the investigation and the family.
Male or female?
It's not, one of them isn't even a name.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they just filled in the space. It wasn't just a first and last name. They just put words in the space.
Just put random words. The first note from the alleged kidnappers went to two Tucson TV stations as well as TMZ. Do you know if you're the only one to get the second note?
We were the only ones to receive the first one on Monday evening. I believe TMZ and the other TV station received it the next day. As far as we know today, we are the only ones to receive this email.
So perhaps, I don't know, do you know if the other Tucson television station uses a system similar to the one you use?
I don't know that answer.
Were there any other threats made against Nancy Guthrie or any other ultimatums issued in this note?
No, we are not calling this a ransom note. I'm not sure if that's why the FBI is not calling it a ransom note, but we are calling it a message because no further demands were made.
Did the message offer any way for the Guthrie family to communicate?
No.
Did this latest message offer any proof that they are, in fact, the kidnappers and not somebody like the man appearing in court today in Los Angeles, a random sicko who decides this is a great way to try and take advantage of people's grief?
I don't know about proof that they actually have her, but like your reporter was saying, the new note does contain something that it appears that the senders seem to think will prove to investigators that at least they're the same people who sent the first note, though, like I said, it doesn't necessarily indicate that it is that it is the people who have her as opposed to a hoax.
And then finally, I know that I'm about to talk to somebody from TMZ who got the first note as well, that they had said that there was something in that message that made it seem to them that whoever is sending this is still in the Tucson area. Did you see something like that?
I would agree with that statement.
You would. Can you elaborate at all?
I cannot elaborate at all.
Okay. Jessica, I really appreciate you joining us tonight, news director from KOLD News 13. Great news station down there. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, let's bring in now Charles Latibaudiere, co-executive producer at TMZ. Charles, thank you for joining us. I imagine you guys are checking your emails, right? I mean, you got the message.
Yeah.
Can you confirm you got that first message on Tuesday morning?
That is correct. We got it on Tuesday morning. I was listening to what Jessica said, and you're right, Elizabeth. We are, refreshing and checking our inbox because we're just wondering if it is indeed the second note is from the same people or person who sent the first, are they going to follow the same pattern?
Right.
Where they sent it to KOLD first, then to the other station in Tucson, and then to us. And we know that we received it on Tuesday, about an hour after the second station in Tucson. Will they follow that same pattern, or is this, or the one, are they just going to send it to KOLD? We don't know. But we are obviously anxiously looking to see if there's anything there. We've also been looking all day, hoping that maybe they would send this proof of life that the family is so desperate, and the law enforcement really.
This morning, the love for our dear Savannah and her family, bringing some light during the agonizing search for their mother, Nancy, as Americans heed Savannah's call to please pray.
We are rallying around Savannah and her family.
Nancy's community in Tucson has been keeping the faith and joining the search.
We love her, and please, dear Lord, bring her home safe.
While the video plea from Savannah and her siblings has touched millions.
Mommy, if you are hearing this, you are a strong woman. You are God's precious daughter.
Including fellow anchors.
We are all wishing that Nancy comes home. Savannah just got to me where she says, Mommy. To hear a grown woman say, Mommy, we're all looking for you. Everybody's looking for her.
It is impossible to imagine what Savannah and her siblings, her whole family are going through, but our prayers across the networks were with you, Savannah, and the country wants Nancy Guthrie brought home.
And our NBC family across the country.
We are all praying for her safe return.
Yeah.
It's just horrific. Our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers are with the family.
The outpouring of well wishes online, ranging from our own Maria Shriver, who wrote, "This story continues to be without any answers, but what is without a doubt is the family's love for their mama," to the sports world, to Hollywood, with Jennifer Garner writing, "May God hold Nancy and her family in the palm of his hands." And during this unimaginable time, Savannah's friends, fans, and colleagues are focusing on the family's faith.
Savannah has what her mom has, the perseverance to get through hard times, the joy, the spirit, the bubbly nature, the smile, the faith in God.
And it's been another reminder that our Today Show viewers really are family. One writing, "I have not stopped thinking about this." And from another, "My heart is breaking for sweet Savannah and her entire family. May they find their beloved mama soon, safe and sound." So many pulling together to give Savannah and her family the strength they need to keep going.
And I think there's like this helpless feeling. I mean, we're all so close with her and we all want to help her. And like, I'm looking at us and I was thinking like, who was first in the hospital room when Hope was sick? Savannah.
Right.
Who hopped on a plane when your parents?
Oh my gosh.
Savannah.
First person.
Who was sitting by Uche? How about when your brother passed?
Savannah.
I mean, she was there, and I was thinking this morning. I was like, what? You know, they say like love is patient, like love is kind, like we'll be patient, and put prayers up, and
that's all we can do.
You know,
it's
that's
just
all we
that
can do.
Feeling of helplessness.
Yeah.
And we're not helpless.
And let's have the pie.
It's brought by Savannah's mom.
Savannah, I'm going to tell you. Are you kidding me?
It wasn't long after Savannah joined the Today Show family that we all fell in love with the matriarch of our own family, Nancy Guthrie.
So this won't be one of those easy at-home recipes.
No.
Okay, tell me about what we have.
Not very healthy either.
Okay, that's fine. Not healthy and not easy.
A mother who loves her family fiercely, a woman with deep conviction who always tells the truth.
I want it to be God.
You want it to be, but Annie was.
Even worse, you were like a poser. I was a poser.
She was a preppy poser.
I was. Mom, you're like killing my rep around here.
She's raised 3 kids with grace, grit, and resilience, always encouraging them to pursue their dreams.
It was really hard for me to leave her, and that's when she said, "If you can't leave me, then I didn't do my job right, Savannah."
A champion for her family, but for us here at Today, too.
There's a #1 member of your book club who loves you more than anyone.
You would think it'd be my mother.
Nope, it is my mother. Her name is Nancy Guthrie.
Not only is Nancy an avid reader, she treasures her time with her friends over mahjong, a game she's played since the 70s.
Savannah, this is my original mahjong set that Dad brought me back from Singapore.
Nancy has shown us she's always curious and always up for an adventure, traveling back to Savannah's birthplace, Melbourne, Australia, on Today.
Seeing the very place you were born is not something most people get to do or see.
True.
To get to go back with my mom, it's just really special.
Special time. Amazingly awesome.
But Nancy's heart is in Tucson.
Well, Mom, you guys came here in the 70s and you had been moving all around. What made you want to stay in Tucson and plant roots?
And so wonderful. Just the air, the quality of life is laid back and gentle.
Perhaps her most precious offering, Nancy's family has always been guided by her deep, unwavering faith.
The greatest gift my mother gave me was faith and belief in God. It changed my whole life.
And her love.
My kids are absolutely amazing. So
they sure are
absolutely amazing.
Love you, Mama.
You know, I think for all of us who just have gotten to know her and love her, it is personal, you know, and I love when she said Tucson was right for her because of how gentle it is.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy was tough as the desert, but she was so gentle too. And so we're just thinking of her and her family today.
You know, I have to say, when I woke up this morning, like a lot of us, you know, hoping for new information, and I, you know, went to my phone and I saw Savannah's post. And Savannah's strength gave me strength.
Yes.
You know, her resolve, her faith. I mean, hello, she literally wrote the book on it.
And that came from Nancy.
Yeah, and if you saw that clip where Savannah was talking with me on the 10, where she said she didn't want to leave her. That was after Savannah's dad passed, and Savannah wanted to go to college, but was worried about leaving her mom, and so she said, "Well, Mom, I can't leave you." And Nancy said, "You have to go," and I think that says everything. Look where Savannah has come.
I saw that post of Savannah last night. I hit my knees and prayed, and I don't think I've ever prayed for anything harder in my life.
That's all we can do right now.
Yeah,
All of us.
and believe that
I
if
think it's
everybody does
collective.
that, the power of the prayer can still turn this around.
Yeah.
It can.
Yeah.
Again, we know someone out there knows something. Call.
And we're back at 8/11 on a very special and meaningful day for our friend Savannah Guthrie. Her new book, Mostly What God Does, is out. We're proud to say right now, congrats.
You know what? We know this is a very personal project for you, one that you were reluctant to take, a journey you're a little scared of, but we are happy to hear about it from the author herself. Hey, girl.
Hi.
We're proud of you,
Thank
by the way.
I think my sister has the best line in the whole book, which is that God was the sixth member of our family. There were 5 of us, but as my sister Annie says it, God was the sixth. Even as a little girl, I was always in a conversation with God. And for most of my life, actually, faith has always been so important to me. When I was 16, my father passed away unexpectedly. I came home on a Friday night, having been out with friends as a teenager, walked in the door, and learned that my father had died. And it was earth-shattering. Sometimes I divide my life into 2 parts. It's like before my dad died and after. This is a line of demarcation. And my father was a man of deep faith and conviction. I remember being asked by friends, "How can you still believe?" And I remember saying, "Oh no, this is when I need him the most. I can't lose my dad and lose God at the same time." During one of the hardest times of my life, I was really, really struggling, and I felt so alone and kind of forgotten. And I remember one day sitting there on my bed, crying and saying, "Rescue me, God, rescue me." And I remember hearing deep inside me, "I am rescuing you." And it actually took me years to really understand what I think God was saying. What he was really saying was, these hard times, this pain, this is your path. So you won't stay here forever. And as hard as it is, this is the way out. This is my rescue.
Savannah Guthrie, live from Studio 1A in Rockefeller Plaza.
I had my first day at the Today Show in the main anchor job. And I was so nervous and terrified and excited and thrilled, but mostly afraid and terrified. In case you need any proof that when you're stressed out, it will manifest in your body, I came down with a blinding migraine. Not only did my head hurt, when I have migraines, I can't see. Part of my vision is cut out. I had no idea how on earth I was going to get out there and say good morning in 20 minutes. So I laid down in my office with the lights all turned off. And this verse popped into my head, a verse I had memorized years and years before. And the verse was, "I look to the hills. Where does my help come from? It comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." And I thought, I cannot help myself here. I need help from beyond. And help is coming. It's coming from God. That was such a comforting thought for me. And somehow I came out there at 7 o'clock and did the show. The biggest blessing of my life is getting to be a mom. Hi. You new here? It's something I always wanted. I actually wanted to be a mom more than I wanted any other thing in life. And I found it really, really hard in my 20s and 30s when I so wanted a family. So when in my 40s, I got married and I got to have my 2 kids, it was the most exquisite joy I could ever imagine. I came to understand that parenthood is God's greatest metaphor. I look at my kids and I think about how I love them and how they delight me and how much I enjoy them. And when I clued in to the way I feel about my kids is how God feels about me and how God feels about us, that was transformative. And the thing is, once you grasp that love, once you really feel it, once you really let it in, you can't hold it inside. I think we're meant to feel God's love and then share it. Watch what God does and you do it too. Mostly what God does is love you. Now you do it too.
And share it. And that's what you did. You were so scared to do this, weren't you?
Yes, I was. It's a good thing I had Hoda telling me everything. Joining us now is former NYPD inspector and Fox News contributor Paul Morrow. Paul, we're honored to have you back. So, assuming the Guthrie family does pay this $6 million Bitcoin ransom, as they said last night in the video, we will pay. We don't know what that means and when. But what happens next in that scenario?
Well, obviously, the hope is that they will then be able to recover their mother someplace that they can get to relatively quickly. My assessment is that it's not going to be Mexico. We've talked about this just because the added difficulty to get over the border. Either way, why take that risk if you're sitting where the kidnappers are? Unless they had something really scoped out, something that was very, very sure. That's a risk you don't want to take. So you'd have to assume it's someplace in the continental United States. And the question is going to be this. Okay, they drop her off. How fast can you trace the transaction? Because once the money hits the Bitcoin wallet, it can be seen. You don't know, however, from where it's going to be extracted. Now, if the mother is, that is Nancy, is dropped off in the United States, you're going to have a race against the clock when you see it extracted to try to get to that area to see if you can pick up who the perps were. And that's the difficulty, let's say, in like ransomware, because the money gets extracted in Russia someplace, in Vladivostok, you're never going to get to it. But if it happens here, then ostensibly, you'd be able to notify the locals, FBI local office, whatever local police, and they try to get to whatever mechanism they used to extract. See, that's the problem with Bitcoin. It moves quickly, you can see it, but the vulnerability is when you take it out of the crypto environment.
Paul, thanks for bringing that expertise. I know there's a lot we can go down when it comes to that. Let's put ourselves in the position of the police officers right now. I want to remind people at home this. They're operating right now kind of irrespective to the ransom, correct? They're not necessarily operating saying, well, we can't find them, but if we pay this ransom, maybe they'll bring her to us. They're really operating kind of trying to find her and these perps without the ransom. In other words, they're not relying on her being turned over just because a ransom is paid.
No, they're certainly not. You know, look, they're going on the assumption that she is alive and that she will be returned. But right now, it's a manhunt like any other, and they're doing everything they can to try to get something that looks like a solid lead. Now, I know from outside of it, it can look like, oh, they're making absolutely no progress. You know, look, I've been in the middle of these things, and even very large task forces where you got 50, 100 people working around the clock on a very complicated thing. I can just tell you, there is a tremendous gulf between what the public knows and what's going on inside that building. So you'd have to assume right now that anything they do have, we probably wouldn't know about. Added to that is the fact that I do think this is, at this point, since we didn't get a local who breaks or somebody who comes forward, by now you'd start to think that would be the case. This is going to be the Bureau that develops this. It's going to be the FBI through some technical means that develops the lane that we go down if it ends up being fruitful. That argues likely something digital, something with expertise of that sort. They are spread out all over the place. They have units all the way back in D.C., expertise spread around the country and the world. And my point is, it may not get down to everybody right away. The cops who are out there poking around at the scene, taking photographs in the middle of the night, they don't necessarily know everything that's going on. And there could be a cluster of people in the Bureau, the FBI that is, who are making very good progress, and it only goes up. It's not going down and disseminated yet until you have to do that, until it's important, until you know it's solid. Otherwise, you got a situation where everybody's running around bumping into each other. So right now, there could be 3 or 4 people who know a lot more than even the rest of the task force, and that would be a good sign.
Paul, I'm glad you mentioned, the ongoing effort to develop those other leads, because I wanted to ask you about some of what appeared to be the investigative work that is ongoing on the ground there. Yesterday we observed investigators removing what we believe to be a camera from Nancy Guthrie's home on the roof. They towed her Subaru. Today we saw them digging around what we understand could be a septic tank. If there's any evidence that's removed from any of these things, how long does it take to process that? Just take the Subaru, for example, towing that out of the house. How long does it take investigators to process that and decide, is there a lead here worth pursuing or not?
So you remove it so that you can do it in a very controlled environment. So what's more controlled than, let's say, the garage that it was sitting in? Well, you want to be able to take it where you have machinery, you have various types of computer software that you can plug into the computer that's in the car. Cars these days, remember, are like rolling computers, and they grab all kinds of data from all over the place. So you're going to want to go someplace where you can do that extraction. You also want someplace where you have very good lighting, because you're going to be doing all kinds of really, really dense and difficult forensic work. And it may come down to something like a hair that shouldn't be there after it's tested. Think about how long that kind of thing would take. That's why I always say, just because we didn't solve it, these TV shows, the first 48 and all that kind of stuff, there was a point where that was relatively valid, because you would solve things like this by talking to people in the neighborhood, talking to informants. That happens relatively quickly, as I was saying earlier. These days, however, when the thing goes into data land, that means you're getting a ton of details, some of it just looks like numbers on a page that have to be crunched. That's the kind of thing that takes time, even with AI, which is still very nascent, very much in its early stages. So the car, they're probably going over it like crazy, looking for, as I said, a hair or anything like that. Prints, the computer, they're probably going to put luminol on the car as well to see if there's any blood on the car that hadn't been picked up. Things like that in a controlled environment, and that's why they're taking it out of there so they can do it in a place that's more comfortable to them. As far as the septic tank, anybody's guess. I don't really know what they're looking for there. I will say this. There have been cases, I was on the edge of one. This one I wasn't in the room, but I know the people that did it. They pulled the drain out of the bathtub, and the bathtub drain still had enough trace amounts of blood that the perp was trying to wash off, that it led to heavy evidence against him. So think in terms of that kind of a thing. That stuff can be DNA'd as well. And of course, there's a more prosaic idea that maybe somebody fleeing the scene threw a knife or something down there, or a tool, because we know that that front Nest camera was removed. There may be tool marks, and they may be looking for a screwdriver or something like that.
Paul, two questions here. Number one, yesterday on the show, we were really interpreting line by line the statement, that video from the Guthrie family. Since then, we're sort of interpreting the silence. And you kind of alluded to this, but you've been inside these rooms. You have a lot of investigative background. Should we look at this as maybe a hopeful sign that authorities are so tight-lipped because they're getting closer? Or is there truly nothing to update us on because they don't have anything? And then potentially relatedly, what do you make of that search of the other daughter's home, Annie, and those photographs that we saw happening last night?
So let's go to the first piece. There's no way to know, as I was saying earlier, because, as I said, there's such a gulf between these things. And if they do have something, it depends on what that something is. As I said, it could be limited to a few people who are running it down. They're not sure if it's something yet or if it's nothing. Maybe all of a sudden they get back some data and they say, wow, this checks out. Here's where we're going to go. Now let's alert everybody. There's a lot of little pockets going on in it. The key in any investigation that's large, the key is that you disseminate everything to everybody when it's time to. You don't want too much white noise. Usually what you do is at the beginning of the shift and at the end of the shift, you do a hot wash, as they call. You go around the room, you talk to all the unit heads, and they all say what they got. And then at the end of the shift, you do the same thing. And if it's important, you really hit it hard. So that's the kind of thing that they're doing right now, almost certainly. But remember, if it is worth pursuing, it may still be something they don't want the public to know. And the sheriff may be reticent to come out and give a press conference. Regarding the flashes, I think you guys have talked about it. The flashes in the house last night. Look, there may be some theory here that they're trying to look to see if for some reason after the blood that we saw that has been confirmed to be Nancy's at her house, that for some reason or other, she ended back up at Annie's house. So if they're working with some kind of timeline, that that's what happened. They may be looking at luminol because luminol does work better at night, and that's why you would be in the house taking photos with the lights off. That's why the only reason you'd be doing that, and maybe that's some theory, or they could be doing something else relative to corroborating the story they're getting from the people that live in that house. That piece, I have to say, smacks a little bit of really, really reaching a bit, because it's happening, what are we, eight days now out. They've already done search warrants there, but unless they got something new, that feels like they're tightening up some loose ends.
Paul Morrow, always the best. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
That way?
Nancy Guthrie's suspected kidnappers are reportedly asking for $6 million via Bitcoin. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, our former colleague here, explained that that request for cryptocurrency might indicate a high degree of sophistication from those abductors.
I believe they're very sophisticated in terms of, the IP address, using VPNs, messages that could be going through other countries and other IP addresses. Then, it's not the old money drop anymore. It's Bitcoin, the Bitcoin wallet. Then it goes through a blockchain. It could go through other countries. There was a lot of thought that went into this. They're using, technology today. Old crimes are being committed in new ways because of advanced technology. It's hard for us to figure this out.
Well, with us now is award-winning tech journalist, the cyber guy, Kurt Knudsen. Kurt, all right, walk us through how difficult it might be for authorities to trace Bitcoin as opposed to traditional payments.
Well, I mean, we originally thought, Guy, how are you? We originally thought that Bitcoin was sort of untraceable, but there have been some cases that have proven otherwise. So there is actually a way to trace it, not always, but many times, and it doesn't happen overnight. Many times it happens weeks, months, sometimes years after an event.
Well, joining us now to break all of this down is former FBI investigator Bill Daley. Bill, it is so terrific to have your expertise join us on this very important evening. Obviously, there are a whole host of people working underneath Sheriff Nanos on this investigation, but the optics of this, attending a basketball game last night, it's raising a lot of questions. What do you make of it?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. It is optics, and I believe this sheriff is an elected official, and it really is up to the constituents of the county to understand whether or not he's doing his job correctly, or whether he can take a break and go to a basketball game. I mean, if we kind of, and I'm sure Joey can appreciate this. I mean, if the general's having dinner in the officers' club, but yet you have the captains, the lieutenants, the platoon commanders, and the people on the ground working on the job, well, it doesn't really matter. They're the ones doing the work, and that's what's happening here. Is that I think one hand you have to say everybody needs a little kind of relief time, but on the other hand, I don't believe this has really impacted the case at all. As we saw, there's a tremendous amount of activity in and around both the Nancy Guthrie's home and her daughter's home. There's all other types of leads that are being followed up both by the FBI as well as the county and other law enforcement agencies. So, as far as the impact of the case, nil, if zero. But for the constituents in the county, they'll need to make their own decision as to, how they see those optics.
Bill, I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. Right now, today, him going to the basketball game, probably not a big deal, but it is indicative when you put the whole story together. I mean, he gave up the crime scene, I think, twice now. We've had multiple folks. Ted Williams, I think, has been the loudest critic of that here on the channel, of giving up the crime scene, allowing it to be contaminated really before the FBI even got there, from the way I understand it. So now the FBI is there. I would imagine they're probably the ones calling the shots, kind of like you're saying, or a lot of other folks, like you said, under him doing the work. Yeah. But when we look at just some of his, and I'm not beating up on him, I feel like this is worth talking about. Some of his decisions early on, by firing the pilot that had the technical skills to do the aircraft surveillance there in the first 3 hours. and basically preventing that from happening, delaying that. And we all know time is critical. I think anybody that watches NCIS knows that. It does kind of build the case that the decisions, at least early on, from the sheriff weren't the great ones.
Yeah, Joey, I was just going to say is that, perhaps as we kind of go through, individual items, you could say things could have been done better. I do have to say is that most cases where local law enforcement on smaller departments, they don't come across, cases such as this, very often. In fact, it may be a once in a career type of case. And to your point is that, the FBI, once the FBI was alerted between President Trump's initiative in getting all the federal agencies who can support this case involved, and Kash Patel surging resources such as the SIRG team, the serial analyst team, all the people who could be helpful in this investigation and evidence response in place, it is kind of, even though it is a local case still at this point, the FBI is certainly kind of, let's say, leading the charge, at least on the ground, for this matter. So, I think, when you also kind of boil this down, and a lot of times people say, well, why did they release the crime scene? Or in other cases, why did they do this or that? And the thing comes down to is that, small departments, don't have this experience. Sometimes they show up, let's say in this case, and I'm going to give some benefit of the doubt, they roll up on a case, they get a call, there's a missing 84-year-old woman. They don't know how she wandered off. Did she go out for a walk and fall down? Now we can see with much more clarity that the situation was much more grave than that. But at the moment they're showing up and they're taking some initial steps, it may not appear that way to them. So I'm glad the Bureau is involved. As I said, you have the SIRG team, which handles both the domestic and international kidnapping cases, abductions. They're the people you want to have at your side. And they're the ones really I have great confidence in kind of, helping lead both the police as well as the family through this ordeal.
Right. I want to ask as well about just the crime scene itself, since we were already talking about it. We see investigators, they keep returning to Nancy Guthrie's home. Why wasn't all the evidence possibly gathered when they first arrived? Is there a reason that they might go back? Now, today, we're seeing them in a drainage area. There's a lot of speculation about what that's about. Is this pretty typical for handling a crime scene, or do you see some abnormalities there in terms of how many times they return and the different areas that they seem to be looking now on day 8?
Many times you'll see that crime scenes are preserved for a long period of time before they turn back to the family or to the owner of the property, what have you. So, I mean, that would be one thing I'd say, is that it was turned over a bit too quickly. It's not that unusual for people to revisit the scene. If we go back to those horrible murders in Idaho, Moscow, Idaho, is that you did see crime scene technicians, you saw police, you saw FBI, you saw other forensic experts going in and out of that home over a period of time. So as more and more they learn, perhaps they learn maybe the samples that were first taken weren't the best samples taken, and so they need to go back and redo them. Or there's some other evidence that perhaps comes up through a lead or a tip that needed get more clarification on, need to go back in. So it's not that unusual they go back in and out of a crime scene. The only thing is that typically those crime scenes are held in abeyance and closed off until they really are finished with the discovery process.
A lot of twists and turns so far. Bill Daley, we're so grateful to have you with us to help us understand it all. Thank you. See you again very soon.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.